how you would measure success for preventing misinformation at Facebook. Hey everyone, my name's Kevin Wei. I am a product manager on IBM's data integration team, and today we're going to be doing a mock PM interview with Steven. And before we get started, Steven, do you mind letting the audience know who you are?
Yeah, happy to. My name's Steven Jenkins. I'm an incoming PM technical at Amazon on their supply chain optimization technology team.
Thanks for coming on and paying it forward. So I know that you were coming from the course, you got a lot of value from the course, and you also got a really cool offer from Google. So thanks for coming on today's show. So for today's mock interview, I'd like to ask you how you would measure success for preventing misinformation at Facebook.
Okay, sounds like a fun question to tackle. Can we start by just me asking you a couple questions in terms of objectives, maybe users that we want to build a product for?
Of course.
And the metrics that we want to track. So first question I have for you, Kevin, is do we have any specific business objectives that we want to optimize for and track? Or would you like me to suggest a couple that come to mind?
Yeah, so Facebook's been in the news, horrible PR. So I would like for you to choose which metrics you think are good.
Okay. Let me just take 1 second and gather a couple thoughts, if that's all right with you.
Sounds good, yep.
Okay, so 3 ideas come to mind in terms of, where Facebook, obviously Facebook's a publicly traded company, fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to deliver value. So always going to be considering, revenue, bottom line. But since this is more of a nuanced, objective or a nuanced question, it being, preventing misinformation. The second is, corporate social responsibility in the company's brand. Facebook is heavily dependent on users coming back on a daily basis. And if they get part of a, delete Facebook movement, or delete Uber movements, that could have a very, negative impact on their brand and therefore their revenue. And then the third that comes to mind is, is engagement. So how do we increase the engagement? How do we get more eyeballs into Facebook's core product offering? I should also ask, is there a specific product at Facebook that we want to be considering? Do we want to talk about WhatsApp? Do we want to talk about, Facebook as we know Facebook, or Instagram, Oculus?
Yeah, just the core Facebook product, so facebook.com.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So how to measure success for preventing misinformation on Facebook? So we've hit on really the high level things. I want to dive a little bit deeper. Maybe I'll just think out loud because the idea is we want to, we really want to, how do we actually quantify a success rate for, information? And misinformation is very subjective. It's hard to do. It's like Twitter. How does Twitter decide what is truth and what is not truth? Facebook has the same problem. So without getting into the product yet, because I want to get more into use cases and pain points, maybe I'll just talk about what users might want to have, options that they might want to have in order to help to fix this problem, and to create alignment between the users and Facebook. So do we want to consider a specific demographic? Do you have anyone in mind? Age groups, geographies, languages, things like that?
It's totally up to you if you want to hone in on one. I think that we're concerned about users who are sharing and spreading misinformation.
Okay, so sharing plus spreading.
And To give you some context, you can think about users through different types. So perhaps there are some users who are doing it accidentally, some who are doing it opportunistically, and some others who are doing it intentionally.
Okay, that sounds good. And just to clarify, are we more concerned for the sake of this discussion about the people who are sharing, spreading misinformation than we are the people who are consuming it?
Which one do you think is more important?
Well, you want to cut it off at the bud, right? So if we focus on the people who are really the ones who are creating it, then I think we'll have the most success. It might be a little bit more difficult because there's just so much more nuance in deciding what is truth, what is not truth. Versus like someone who's just simply sharing information because that piece of information could come from someone that they know and therefore trust.
Yep, that makes sense. Let's say that, there's this viral loop going on. Content that comes on is never static. As soon as it comes on, people are sharing it and interacting with it. So we do want to cut it off at the bud, like you said. So let's go down here.
Okay, great. And so we're gonna want to talk about metrics. Do you want to talk about metrics through the context of actually suggesting a product enhancement, or are you more interested in just like specific metrics that we can track? Because I do have some ideas on how we could like create improvements or changes to the product that we could then use in order to potentially track those metrics and know whether or not we're meeting this core objective of decreasing the spread of misinformation. What do you think?
Yeah, if you have some ideas, we can go down that route and then we can bookmark the metrics discussion, but let's not forget the metrics.
Okay. Okay, cool. So Facebook metrics, the key ones for spreading misinformation that come to mind are, so Facebook has a bunch of different sort of ways in which to know whether or not something is being interacted with in a big way. So we can be tracking likes, but obviously they also have dislikes. They have happy. They have the different engagement levels. Something could be shared, so we might want to track shares. So likes, dislikes, angry, things like that, shares. When it comes to like spreading misinformation, I know a lot of misinformation is spread throughout like Facebook groups, right? So we might want to track like how likely is someone to, what happens with a post, for example. Like what are the differences when it's just like me posting up to everyone on my feed versus like me posting up to someone who's in a group. So like QAnon, for example. What is the impact of that? So I'd break out sharing into two different segments. The first is to friends and to family, but the second one is into like these groups.
And certainly there's also
So
people
likes.
who post uh, publicly, right? And then people interact with it and those go viral on the news feed.
Okay, so let's go with that one as the third one. So groups, public, and friends. And of the three, yeah, between groups and public, I'd say that's where the most virality comes from. But yeah, I'd be looking for things to sort of originate in this echo chamber, and then tracking whether or not if it is a public piece of information, how widely shared it's being. I think that once something gets widely shared, if there are a lot of people who are liking it and a lot of people who are disliking it, that will be a proxy for whether or not this is a very divisive topic. in a lot of these divisive topics, of course, are um, I imagine that there's a correlation between something that's very divisive and something that's potentially misinformation. I know that Facebook also has experimented with, flagging the same way Twitter has. Is this, information trustworthy, for example? So we'd be wanting to measure whether, how widely flagged is something, and also, misinformation, I know, spreads more, incorrect information spreads faster than correct information. This for the same reason that, it's hard to take your eyeballs off of a car crash. So I'd be wanting to look at the velocity of sharing that's taken place on a specific post. But of course, it'd be very difficult to actually start to quantify these, and maybe build AI around preventing this. I know that that's not the objective of what we're talking about here, but it could be a potential benefit having, really strong metrics in place. So yeah, so to sort of start to build out a foundation for the second half of this discussion, I would say the things that I'm looking at very closely, metrics wise, on a specific post, is, is it public? One, what's the likes to dislikes ratio? What is the total engagement for the post? How many flags has this been given? And what's the velocity of spread for this particular piece? And if I were to start to prioritize them, I think the flag is one of the most powerful one, because we're getting the user feedback saying, hey, this might be misinformation. The other ones, it's much harder to do, but it's just information that we'll want to track, so that later on we can maybe go back and say, this is indeed misinformation, and here are the sort of heuristics, or the these are the patterns that we see in terms of velocity, likes to dislikes ratio, volume of engagement, these types of things.
Great. So your North Star sounds like the number of flags, and you have all these supplementary metrics that are going to help. I'm kind of curious if you think that, are these metrics strictly correlated to misinformation, or could they also pop up for other types of viral content?
They absolutely could, which is why I'm saying it's information that we'll want to track, but we'll want to bring in some metadata after the fact on whether or not this is, misinformation, or it's just really viral content, like, someone did something great. You see those videos on Facebook all the time, like someone doing something sweet for a stranger. That's one of my favorite things to see on these social platforms, is good people doing good things. And when you do see a good person doing a good thing, you will see a lot more upvotes than you will downvotes, right? And that's why, as maybe a second correlation, second metrics to check is like, what is the likes to dislikes ratio, and what's, maybe multiply that by the total engagement, because of what I said earlier in terms of divisiveness and misinformation associated with divisiveness, things like that.
Absolutely. I know that earlier you wanted to surface some ideas. Did you want to talk briefly about that before we close the interview?
Yeah, in terms of ideas for products, I mean, I do feel like, it would be difficult after the fact to actually create like enough, a large enough data set to do any meaningful machine learning. But, we have a lot of resources, of fact checkers, so we could at least start to start to build a decent sized database of, here are all the inputs in terms of the main metrics that we've listed out, and this is misinformation or not, just like a binary classifier, and use that as a way to potentially not completely replace the need for a team of fact checkers, which is probably the worst job in the world, by the way. I feel for those people, but at least support their efforts. So it could be the just something that a tool that they reach for to help scale them and to make their job a little bit easier. I feel like that'd be a useful tool to have at Facebook in terms of being able to identify misinformation before it surfaces, before it goes completely viral.
Awesome, Stephen. So this is a great answer. I'd love to give you an opportunity to provide some self-feedback and any tips that you want to give the audience as well in
Sure.
terms of just general PM interviewing.
Yeah, I think that I wanted to turn it into a product question. This was very obviously a metrics question. I think metrics questions are a little bit easier than product questions, at least in my experience. I've had more success with them. But I recognized that pretty early on. All right, reel it back, focus on the metrics. This is, and I think you did a great job of bringing me back to the actual question at hand. So that's my thought on like the question answer. I have some like general feedback, but we can do that. We can do that later, or
Sure. Yeah. So I think one thing that I would do differently is include the mission of Facebook and think about how this problem relates to the mission, if it's derailing us from the mission, or if it's good for the mission, but it's bad for PR. I think there's several different ways to think about how this fits into the mission. I liked how you talked about the users. I liked how you went through and you listed some pretty interesting metrics. One that I would have included is, so this one would be sort of a supplementary metric. I think you were on the right track in terms of a North Star, but one that I would have thought about was the ratio of like the comments to the likes. Perhaps there's a hypothesis that you can make where users or audience members who are talking more than liking something, maybe it's a controversial type of content. I think that's something that we could have talked about. But overall, this is a great answer, and I'd love to give you the stage if you have any general PM interviewing advice.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback. Yeah, any general feedback? Just I can really only speak to my experience, and what I've been telling people since I've gone through this process is that practice is so important. Being able to take the most mundane idea and turn it into an interesting product, I feel like it's such a cool skill to have, and it's one that I've just started to hone myself. But I'll like walk around. I live in Denver. I'll walk around Denver and I'll look at the street lamp and I'll think, how can I improve that? And then I'll go through the circles methodology, or any of the others that you read out there on places like Exponent and stuff. And I said practice because it'll give you the confidence to really present yourself in the best light. I remember when I did my first phone interview with Google, I had just the worst product pitch, but I was confident in that pitch, and I was comfortable enough to show some empathy. I think that's the reason why I advanced. So just practicing being yourself, have fun with it. I think a lot of people freeze up in the interview process, but if you make it interactive, it makes it fun for the person who's interviewing you. So let them talk, let them think, let them encourage you, get them on your side, talk about, us and we and together, these types of things. I think that goes a long way. And the last thing I'd say is that just when you are interviewing, this might be more true later on, after you've had a couple of years. But engage with the PM network. I have had such a great experience, like reaching out to not only friends who are PMs, but strangers. Maybe they went to the same college as me, or they live in the same city. But engage with them and have them recommend you for the job. Like I had great success with like the big companies because I went in through a friend or someone I went to college with. But there were companies in my case where I just applied that you'd never heard of, and they never wrote me back. So really work your network, and like, of course, be cognizant of their time. But people want to help, so help them help you.
Referrals are a great way. And thanks for the advice, Stephen. It's awesome that you're coming back and giving back to the Exponent community. And for the audience members, good luck with your upcoming PM interview. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons below to let us know that this video was valuable for you. And of course, check out hundreds more videos just like this at tryexponent.com. Thanks for watching and good luck on your upcoming interview.